What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I want to apologize in advance for the cleavage that you guys are seeing, but I'm pretty desperate to bring boat neck shirts back. And you know, there's going to have to be a little titty that's going to have to be shown in order for that to happen. If your sister can wear it, so can I. The disadvantage of the boat neck shirts, though, is that they don't give me much of a place to clip the microphone on. Usually when I make a video, I'll clip the microphone on the collar of my shirt or something, but I don't have a collar right now. So we're going to be using this back scratcher not only as my microphone holder, but also as my pointing device. As you guys can see, we are at the marker board today, and we are going to be talking about my current training split, which is full body training. So before we get into the intricacies of the split, I just kind of have a couple disclaimers that I want to make. The educational fitness scene industry right now is an extremely hostile place, and just to be super honest with you guys, it's kind of killed the want and the vibe in terms of making educational content. So I want to make it very clear before we get this video started that this split was made by me for me. I am very aware that there are other people in the industry who have full body splits that they run, and they have different methodologies or approaches that they would like to use. And you know, the sign of a smart individual is realizing that there are multiple ways to get the job done. So I want to make it very clear before we get into the intricacies of the split that I'm not saying that this is how you have to run full body training. I have a good handful of my clients who are running full body training, and there's not a single one of them that runs full body training the way that I run it. So this is for me, by me, based off of my goals and the improvements that I need to make. So some more context with that is I spent the first 6 years of my hypertrophy training journey following a push-pull legs split, which is a really good split. But after getting some feedback from my first show, the NPC Midwest Gladiator, which is the shirt that you're seeing, and if you can see this up in the corner, I just pointed with my finger when I have a pointing stick in my hand. We're in my office, and this is the shirt for that. I have another one on my wall. But the feedback that I got from the judges from that competition, and what was pretty obvious to me right off the bat, just kind of being there with my own two eyes, was that I needed size, like a lot more muscle mass to be competitive on a bodybuilding stage and potentially take that to the next level. So for me, stepping off a stage in November, I'm filming this video on November 13th, 2024. So we're over a year removed from my competition. I'm about 53 weeks post-show. The big thing that I wanted to do over the course of this past year was just get back to basics. You know, if you had asked me before I stepped on stage if I was an advanced trainee, I would have said yes. You know, I've been training for 6-7 years, and you know that would kind of constitute me as an advanced trainee. But when you compete in a bodybuilding show and you see real advanced trainees in front of you, you know, all over the place backstage, making you look like a little kid, that definitely is kind of a slap in the face and kind of a reality check, for lack of a better word. Made me realize that I need to get back to basics. I need to stop with all the fluff and just need to get into something that works. So I spent the first 3 months of my off season from November to February following upper-lower training. Upper-lower training went so good for me those first 3 months that I was heavily tempted to kind of take the whole high-frequency thing to the next level and move into full-body training, which is where we are as of now. I've been running full-body training for the last 9 months, and those 9 months have not only been the fastest that I have progressed in the gym in terms of my performance, but it's also been the most muscle that I've ever grown in a 9-month period. I am pretty happy with the improvements that I have made so far this year, and I feel pretty confident that running this split for another year is just going to continue to provide me more muscle, and that obviously is the goal. So another disclaimer is the way that you're seeing the split laid out is not the way that it's always been laid out. There are a couple of changes that I've made since I've started, which I'll try to remember to mention. And also, in full transparency, if I were to, make this video again in 3 months, 6 months time, it's probably going to look a little bit different then. I have had to adjust the full body training split more than I've ever had to adjust any other training split that I've ever done, because the full body training split is so taxing and it's so fatiguing and it's so demanding. There's just constantly things that I've had to kind of play around with just to make the run of progression and progressive overload consistent. So we'll try and remember some of those things as we go through and kind of mention those things. But without further ado, I kind of just want to get into some of the X's and O's of some of the workouts here. So how do I set up the full body split? So I have 4 training sessions that I do. I have A, B, C, and D. And obviously with full body training, we are hitting all of our muscle groups in every single workout. Now, just because we're hitting everything in every workout, it doesn't mean that we can't specify certain things or maybe bias certain things. And that is the way that I have the split set up for myself, is that I will alternate back and forth between upper body focused workouts and lower body focused workouts. So, what's kind of the difference there? How do I do that? Right now, A and C are my upper body focused workouts, and then B and D are my lower body focused. And the biggest change and differences between the two is that on the upper body workouts, I start with my upper body work first, and then I do my lower body work at the end. And then vice versa on the lower body dominant sessions, I start with all of my leg stuff, and then I do my upper body stuff at the end. So the main goal that I'm trying to do or kind of try to adhere to as I'm going through these sessions is I'm trying to hit the muscle with an exercise, and then the next rotation that I come around progressively overload that stimulus with. I have found personally that using different exercises on each of the 4 sessions gives me the longest run of progression. I am fortunate enough to train in a gym that has a lot of equipment and a lot of really good equipment so that I can have a bunch of different variations. For example, I do a lateral raise on all 4 workouts, and I have 4 different lateral raises that I do. I have 4 different bicep curls that I do. I have 4 different squatting movements that I do, 4 different lat exercises, so on and so forth. I truly think that variety is the spice of life, and different muscles will train, or different exercises will train the muscles through different angles, different resistance profiles, and will stimulate a different stimulus within the muscle for growth. And don't get me wrong, if you're training in a gym that has limited equipment, there are still ways that you can go about setting that up. In an ideal scenario, you would have 4 different chest presses and 4 different this and that, but not everyone is that lucky. I have a couple exercises in here that I use multiple times throughout the week, and I will kind of talk about how I keep progression going on both of those and how I kind of differ between the rotations. But the goal is to preferentially use different exercises just to kind of keep the stimulus in the muscle different from workout to workout and keep progressive overload going for a little bit longer. I've kind of noticed that if you use the same exercises every workout with the same rep range, the point in which you die out progressive overload wise comes quicker than what it does if you can kind of rotate between different exercises. So we'll go ahead and we'll get into some of the intricacies. Let's kind of talk about the programming and kind of how I have things set up the way they do, and we'll kind of go over the the upper body dominant sessions all at once, and then the lower body sessions all at once, because the layout is pretty similar between them. I just kind of swap some of the exercises out. So you're going to notice that every single session, whether it's an upper body dominant one or a lower body dominant one, is going to start with calves and abs. I prefer to do that stuff at the beginning as compared to the end. A couple different reasons for that. I feel like I'm able to progressively overload the lifts better. I'm able to put more effort into those exercises at the beginning. As you guys can see, these workouts are pretty long and they're very fatiguing. By the time that I get done with a full push workout and a full pull workout and a full leg workout, the last thing that I want to do is calves and abs. I just want to go home. So I find that putting that stuff earlier on allows me to put more effort into it, and it does not impact my ability to progress anything that comes subsequently. I'll kind of get questions like that on social media when I talk about how I do crunches before I get into my presses, and people will say, does that not affect your ability to progress? No, it does not. So, and I know that because I have spent years experimenting with the order that I manipulate the workouts with. So just, I don't want to get on a side tangent here, but if you find yourself asking that question, you can answer that question for yourself by just trying it. Tomorrow when you go in the gym, do your crunches before you press, and you'll notice right away that your presses are still just as strong. It doesn't change anything. So all of the sessions are going to start with ab and calf work. Looking at the abs, I personally find with training the abs that it's necessary, if you want to optimally develop them, to have some sort of a crunching movement and some sort of a leg raising movement. My gym has a lot of different crunches in them. Some of them are good, some of them are not good. For me, after all these years, I still truly believe that my personal favorite and what I think is the best for me crunching exercise is just the good old-fashioned decline bench. Set the decline up at high of it as the maximum incline so that I can get maximum range of motion. And because I'm doing that same exercise every single day, every single session that I do, I will rotate back and forth between the rep ranges that I use. So you'll notice these L's and these H's. That stands for light and that stands for heavy. So on the light days, A and C, I'm kind of trying to aim to fail somewhere between 8 and 12 reps, maybe as high as 15. And then on the heavy days, I'm aiming to fail somewhere between 5 and 8 reps. So what that may look like is on the A and C days, I may do my decline crunches holding on to a 10 or 15 pound dumbbell, whereas on the heavy days I do those holding on to a 25 or 30 pound dumbbell. And the difference in the weight causes me to fail at different rep ranges. The leg raise is always a hanging leg raise, always done body weight. That's kind of a staple movement for me, and no matter what, I kind of always seem to fail somewhere between like 8 and 12 reps on that. So that's really all that I do for abs is a decline crunch and a leg raise, and I just rotate back and forth between how heavy or how light I go on the crunch. And then getting into the calves are a very similar setup. My gym actually has a lot of calf raises. I think that we have 4 of them. And at one point, I was doing all 4 different calf raises, but I noticed that 2 of those calf raises, as I got heavier and heavier on them, I was losing range of motion. The machine was not allowing me to get the full stretch. So the only 2 calf raises that I have in my gym that allow me to get the full stretch are a donkey calf raise and then an Icarian calf raise. And so those are the only 2 calf raises that I use. And you'll notice that I kind of rotate back and forth between donkey, Icarian, donkey, Icarian, donkey, Icarian, back and forth. And then I alternate between the rep ranges as well. So when I do the donkey calf raises on the A day, I do them in a heavy rep range where I'm aiming to fail in the 5 to 8. And then on the light day, I'm aiming to fail in the 8 to 12. So again, using different rep ranges kind of allows me to keep that run of progressive overload going for a little bit longer. After the abs and calves are done on an upper body dominant day, I like to do the delt isolation work next. I like to do my rear delt movement and my side delt movement. I have found previously what I used to do is I used to have those towards the end, and I do have those towards the end on my lower body dominant days because those days are kind of more focused on lower body, and I'm content with moving them a little further down in the session. But what I was noticing on the upper body days is that by the time I finished all of my presses and my rows and my pull downs, it was getting difficult for me to progress the lateral raises and the rear delts. So instead, I moved those towards the beginning, which allowed me to, very similar to the abs and calves, allowed me to put more effort into those and get on longer runs of progressive overload without them impacting the movements that follow. I mean, realistically, that's another question people may have is, do the rear delts, doing your rear delt, side delt stuff first, does that impact your ability to press? No, because the rear delts nor the side delts really contribute much to a pressing movement. And actually, I like doing my delt isolation movement before I press because I kind of use that as like a shoulder warm up. You know, when I'm starting off every workout moving my shoulder through various planes of motion, back and forth, up and down. But that kind of helps me get my shoulders warmed up and feel more comfortable, ready to press. So after the abs and calves, I will get into the delt isolation, a rear delt exercise, and a lateral delt exercise. On the A day, the rear delt movement is a rear delt cable fly. On the C day, it's a good old reverse pec deck. And then on the A day, the lateral raise is the Arsenal Strength lateral raise machine and the Cybex lateral raise machine on the C day. Both of these exercises on both of these days, the machines are basically right next to each other. So the cable stack that I use for the rear delts and the Arsenal lateral raise machine are right next to each other in the gym. So I basically superset those. And then the same thing with the reverse pec deck and the Cybex lateral. Those two exercises are kind of back and forth like with each other. So I will literally superset those. So both of these exercises kind of get done simultaneously. After the delt isolation stuff, we will get into the pressing movements, and I will do one dedicated chest focused press and then one dedicated tricep focused press. On the A workout, the chest press is the incline Smith machine press, and it's the incline dumbbell press on the C workout. And then on the A workout, the tricep movement is a Smith JM press, where it's a narrow grip press on the C day. This narrow grip press is actually a decline chest press that I set up. I put the seat really high, so instead of the handles finishing around my pec, it finishes a little bit lower, kind of towards my upper abs. And then because of that handle position, I can keep my elbow tucked a little bit closer to my body and focus on kind of replicating a JM press where I'm kind of trying to fold my lower arm over top of my upper arm just to get that stretch and everything, and the tricep there. And then I obviously take a little bit more narrow of a grip. Instead of taking a wider grip, which would cause my humerus to flare out a little bit more, I take a narrower grip, which allows me to keep the elbow a little bit tucked more. Obviously, narrow grip press, that's pretty self-explanatory, but chest focus press and a tricep focus press on both of the training sessions. And then from there, I will move into the back work. The back work has one dedicated upper back movement and one dedicated lat movement. The upper back movement on the A day is the hammer strength high row, and then on the C day it is the T-bar row, good old-fashioned chest-supported T-bar. And then the lat movement on the A day is the hammer strength lat row, and then the lat movement on the C day is a cable pull down. That is just basic bilateral, use a neutral grip, bilateral cable pull down on a cable stack, bread and butter movement. So two different exercises for my back. One of the things that I experimented early on with was on the A day, I would do my presses and then my back stuff. And I was trying on the C day to do the back stuff first and then do the presses. But I found that the presses suffered and the presses were not, the presses hit a wall of progressive overload quicker when I did the back stuff first. And I also noticed that my back stuff is very resilient. You know, I could move the back stuff to the very end of the session, and no matter where I put it, I'm able to progress it at the same rate. So I kind of noticed that my back stuff is very resilient, and I can kind of put that wherever I want to put it, and I'm able to progress it quite equally. So each workout will get 2 exercises for the back, 1 upper back and 1 lat focused, and those will specifically come after the pressing movements because that allows me to get a better run of progressive overload going with all of those. And then after the, really the last muscle in the upper body at this point, we've done the rear delt, we've done the side delt, chest, tricep, upper back, lat. Really the only muscle group left to hit in the upper body is the biceps. So I have easy bar curl on the A day and a cable curl on the C day, it's still the easy bar grip, the cambered grip, but obviously with this being a free weight movement and this being a cable movement, the resistance profiles are different, so they stimulate the muscle just a little bit differently and are able to progress a little bit differently as well. So that wraps up all of the upper body work. Obviously, I know that the calf raises are not considered upper body, but the calf raises will always go first. But at this point in the session, I've done all the upper body stuff, and now we're getting into the lower body stuff. And the adductors are a muscle group that I am trying to improve quite heavily. And so I am doing the adductor on every training session. Going back to one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning, you know, I have 4 different calf raises and 4 different, lat exercises. My gym only has 1 adductor. So how do I use the adductor on all 4 sessions and still progress them? Very similar to the abs and calves, I have light and heavy rep ranges that I use, but I also have a third variation with the adductors, and that's paused reps. We'll talk about that when we get into the lower body sessions. But on my upper body dominant sessions, I have 2 light numbers. So I have 1 light day where I'm trying to fail somewhere between 12 and 15. And then on this light day, I'm trying to fail somewhere between 15 and 20. So I have, both are considered light, but there are 2 different rep ranges. If anything, maybe I should start calling this like super light or something, 12 to 15 is pretty light, 15 to 20 is probably like super light. So maybe I should change the name of that, but different rep ranges, even though they're both considered light days. And then I get into leg extension and leg curl. I will do a leg extension and a leg curl on every single workout. My gym does have 4 different leg curls, so I'm good to go there. But we only have 2 leg extensions. We have a Cybex bilateral leg extension, and then we have the hammer strength unilateral, the single leg extension. So I will do both of those within the week, and I do the bilateral leg extension on the A day and the single leg extension on the C day, and then heavy reps on the leg extension, the bilateral one, and then light reps on the single leg. And then the lying leg curl. So I had just mentioned that I have 4 leg curls in my gym. We have a standing leg curl, the single leg one, which I have on the D day. We have the seated leg curl, which I have on the B day. And then we have 2 different lying hamstring curls. At one point, I was using both of them, but there is one that I like much, much more than the other one. So instead of doing a lying leg curl that I don't like, I just do the one that I do like twice. And then I just change the rep range there. So I do heavy lying leg curl on the A day and light lying leg curl on the C day. And then the final exercise that I do is the quad compound movement, or the squat movement. On my upper body days, that is a leg press, and on my lower body dominant days, that is a spinal loaded squatting movement. So on the A day, I use a pivot leg press. That's the Cybex squat press. That is in a pivot motion. And then hammer strength has a 45-degree, what most people would consider to be a standard leg press. And that will be the exercise that I use on the C day. So on the upper body days, I have a very similar layout: abs and calves, delt isolation, chest and tricep stuff, stuff, back and bicep stuff, and then the lower body stuff at the end. And then I just rotate back and forth between different exercises between the A and the C days. Okay, let's get into the lower body dominant workouts, which will be B and D. So very similar type of setup to kind of the upper body ones. I kind of have a very similar template that I will use for both of the workouts, but I will just kind of change the exercises back and forth. So again, every workout starts off with abs and calves. I do the Icarian calf raise on my lower body days, heavy rep range on B, light rep range on D. And then, whereas on an upper body workout, I would go into the delt isolation stuff from here. On a lower body workout, I get into my hip stuff, the adductor and the abductor. As mentioned earlier, the adductors are an exercise muscle group that I'm trying to improve massively. So I am doing those on both of my lower body dominant days. I do paused reps on the B day and just regular rep tempo on the D day. So on a regular rep tempo, if you guys can imagine that my hands are my knees, right? Like I'm doing the adductor right in front of you guys. On a normal day, I will hit peak contraction and then, one count and then release. On the pause days, I will hit peak contraction and I will physically count 1, 2, 3, release. 1, 2, 3, release. I use a 3-count pause in the fully shortened position just to kind of take advantage of that and create another variation that I can progressively overload. So as mentioned earlier, I have the same adductor machine that I use on all 4 days, but I have different rep ranges and different variations for all of them. I do 12 to 15 on A, 8 to 10 paused reps on B, 15 to 20 on the C day, and then the same 8 to 10 rep range on the D day. It's just a difference between whether I do that exaggerated pause or whether I don't. And then I get into the abductor. The abductor allows me to get a little bit of direct glute stimulus. Really, the main reason why I do the abductor is for posing. One of the things, kind of going back to my competition, one of the things that I learned very quickly is with posing, being able to externally rotate your hips is really important with getting a lot of your leg fibers and everything to show with your posing. And I really struggle to externally rotate my hips. So I wanted to make it a goal this year to train my external rotators directly in hopes that strengthening them and building a better mind-muscle connection with them would allow me to improve the external rotation that I have at the hips. And so far, so good. Things are going good, and knock on wood, I haven't had any hip injuries this year. And whether or not that comes from strengthening my glutes, I don't know. But I know that ever since I've been doing the direct abductor, good things are happening in my posing and my training. So I'm going to run with it. I will do like a 5 to 8 rep range on both of those days. But again, just rotating between like a regular rep tempo and a paused rep tempo. So the adductor and abductor, I do paused adductor on B and heavy abductor on B, and then heavy adductor, paused abductor on the D day. I just kind of flip those back and forth. After I do the hip stuff, I like to do my leg extension and leg curls before I do the hip hinge and before I do the squatting movement. Very similar thought process there to what I had mentioned with the delts. When I do the squat and then hip hinge before I do the leg curl and leg extension, the leg curl and leg extension will eventually fail to progress. Whereas when I do the leg curl and leg extension before I do the hip hinge and the squat, I'm able to progress all 4 of those movements. The hinge and the squat are not affected by the leg curl and leg extension, but vice versa, that is the case. So I do the leg curl and the leg extension before I get into the compound work. So on the B day, my hamstring curl is the seated hamstring curl. And then on the D day, it is a single leg standing variation. And then my leg extension is that single leg hammer strength unilateral leg extension that I am doing in a light rep range on my C day. I do it with a heavy rep range and with a pause on the B day. So 5 to 8 reps with like a 3 count pause in that peak contraction. And then my leg extension on the D day is the bilateral leg extension that I'm doing on the A day, but I will do a paused rep there. So again, going back to the leg extensions, I do the bilateral leg extension 2 times in the week. One day is like a heavy rep range with just a 1 count pause. The next day is a heavy rep range with a 3 count pause. And then I do the single leg extension 2 times during the week. Previously, I was doing that similar to the bilateral one where I was doing paused and heavy. But this day, the heavy day, without the pause was failing to progress. So I recently dropped the rep range on that to work in a lighter rep range. And then I get into the squatting movement and the hip hinge movement. On the B day, I will do the squat first before I do the hinge. And then on the D day, I will do the hinge before I do the squat. So I kind of rotate the focus of those there. The squatting movement that I do on the B day is the pendulum squat, and the hip hinge that I use is the bent over row. There may be some people that think that the bent over row is not a hip hinging movement. I would disagree with that. You know, what I would consider to be a hip hinge movement is really anything that will tax hamstrings, spinal erectors, and then the fact that the bent over row tacks on some extra upper back stimulus is just a positive. It's a win. It's like, icing on the cake as far as I'm concerned. So I will do the pendulum squat and then the bent over row on the B day, putting more effort into the pendulum than the bent over in terms of where I'm focusing the session. And then on the D day, I will do the RDL first and then the hack squat. So doing the pendulum first obviously affects the weight that I'm able to use on the bent over row, and doing the RDL first impacts the weight that I'm able to use on the hack, which is why I rotate back and forth. I have 2 lower body days, but on one of the lower body days I squat and then hinge, and then the other lower body day I hinge and then squat. So I just rotate back and forth between those. And then once we finish that off, that is all of the lower body work for the lower body dominant day. And then we get into the upper body work. Because the bent over row has a good amount of upper back stimulus on it, I don't feel the need to do a direct upper back movement on the B day. So I just move into a lat movement, which is the hammer strength underhand pull down. I do use the pull up as my upper back movement on the D day. I'm very aware that you're going to get some lat stimulus on the pull up, but the main thing that I'm focusing on when I do the pull ups is when I hit the full stretch, I'm trying to maximally elevate and protract my scapula, and when I hit contraction, I'm trying to maximally contract and depress my scapula. So I'm focusing on getting as much shoulder blade and scapular movement throughout the pull-up as I can possibly get. And again, I do feel my lats on that movement, but my upper back is kind of screaming a little bit more than what my lats are. So because I still have some juice left in my lats, after the pull-up on the D day, I will do a single arm cable row, just basic pulling towards the hip, biasing the lat there, whereas I feel the bent over row and the hammer pull down is all that I need on the B day. From there, I get into the chest and tricep stuff. You will notice that on the A and C days, I have a dedicated exercise for the chest and a dedicated exercise for the triceps, whereas I don't have that on the B and D days. I used to have like a fly and a tricep push down that I would do, having another dedicated exercise for each one, but I noticed that those lifts were not progressing. So instead of doing 2 different exercises for my chest and triceps, one for each one, I combined those into into one exercise that's a compound movement that hits both of them. So that movement on the B day is the hammer press. A hammer strength chest press is obviously a chest focused movement, but because the hammer strength stuff overloads heavily in the shortened position, we do get a good tricep stimulus with that as well. And then my chest and tricep movement on the D day is a weighted dip, which is about as basic of a compound exercise as you can get. So, and then after that, all that I have is a lateral raise, which I do a dumbbell lateral raise on the B day and a cable lateral raise on the D day, and then a bicep curl, which I do a dumbbell curl on the B day and a cable curl. I do a dumbbell curl on the B day and a cable curl on the D day. All right, guys, so there you have it. That's the top secret training split that I've been running for the past 9 months or so. As mentioned earlier, I feel, progress pictures and everything are indicating that I've grown quite a bit from this split. Body weight's going up, and I'm very confident that as long as I continue to follow the split, progress the lifts, take my body weight up, and tick the boxes outside of the gym to keep recovery going, this past year of training has been my best year of training that I've ever had, and I don't see why this next year couldn't be even better. So I'm sure that this video is going to spark a lot of questions. At least that's the hope. Hopefully I've kind of maybe planted the seed in some of your guys' head to try one of these like higher frequency training splits between upper, lower, or full body training. And again, I just kind of wanted to give you guys a rundown of how I am running full body training right now. So again, if you guys have any questions, I look forward to hearing those in the comments. If you guys are interested in any of my coaching services, I have those in the description as well. And yeah, guys, let me know what you have. Stay tuned for the next video. And as always, take care of yourselves.